What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Build a Mind podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Bello. And I got to say, over the last year, I have learned a ton about podcasting, about showing up, about how to be authentic to who I really am and to the mission and the values and the beliefs that I have, whether it's around Bitcoin, life, the monetary system, whatever it is. And today's guest really gave me a new perspective on how I show up for myself, how I show up for my family, how I show up for you guys. And so, what you're going to find from this episode, you're going to hopefully find that there's a lot of insights to how you show up in life, how you show up for your business, the products and services that you provide, and the quality of those products and services. So, who is my guest? My guest today is Beau Turner, CEO and founder of Abundant Minds. He has carved out quite a unique path in the industry by focusing on high quality hosting, top tier service, and mining education. In a world where mining is becoming increasingly competitive, as we all know, he's doubling down on helping miners succeed rather than just plugging in machines and letting them go. We're going to be diving into Beau's journey into Bitcoin, his take on the current system as it stands, why he decided to build a hosting company that prioritizes education, and we'll also explore his thoughts on heat reuse, the broader mining industry, and how he's positioning Abundant Minds for the future. Beyond mining, we're going to talk a little bit about staying authentic in the podcasting space, in our life, work-life balance, all of that stuff, and what Bitcoin means to him on a personal level. I've decided that I'm going to change up the podcast a little bit based on this conversation. And moving forward, I'm going to do a couple of things differently. I'm going to change how I show up and how I manage my time, and making sure that I'm staying authentic to my goals and my mission, and then letting that resonate with the audience, and instead of trying to get a ton of content out there and just hammering away at my time, I'm going to focus more on the quality of time that I spend, whether I'm spending time here in the studio doing research for a podcast, or building my company, spending time at home, whatever it is. So I hope that that comes across in the future. I hope you guys enjoy what's happening. I hope you guys enjoy the change. With that, I'm going to get into a couple of ads, and then we're going to get right into the podcast with Beau Turner.
Join the Mastermind Club, a weekly gathering of Bitcoin miners sharing insights to help you optimize or build your mining business. Our community fosters open discussion and collaboration, connecting you with experts who can help you overcome challenges and find solutions faster. Every other week, we host the Mastermind Deep Dive, where industry leaders delve into the financial, operational, and optimization hurdles faced by miners like you. Brought to you by Bitcoin Mining World.
All right, you guys know what to do. I made it as easy as possible for you. There is a QR code down there at the bottom of the screen. Scan that, click on the link, go to the link, whatever you have to do to get to the Mastermind community page. This is a free community for anyone and everyone. It's a great opportunity. It's a great place to learn about Bitcoin mining from people who have been where you are. If you're somebody who's trying to get into Bitcoin mining, or somebody who's trying to just level up your operation, the Mastermind community is a great place for you to start and work on that journey. I have learned a lot from many of the people in the space there, and I continue to learn every single week. I show up on a weekly basis to help educate and empower the next generation of Bitcoin miners, who I once was, and hopefully together we can move the community forward. We can push this movement to new heights. So definitely go and join the Mastermind community. And the next thing I want to tell you guys about is I am on the conference circuit. I'm going to be at a bunch of different conferences this year. Obviously, I'll be at Mining Disrupt, which by the time this comes out, that will be over. But Mining Disrupt, I'll be in Vegas. I'll be at CypherCon. We will be at Bitcoin Day in Naples. and we're going to Bitcoin Alaska. And huge shout out to the guys over there at Bitcoin Alaska. They are doing incredible things. I do believe this is the first event, but it's going to be the first of many, and it is going to be an incredible event. So go to bitcoinalaska.org, I believe. Yes, bitcoinalaska.org in order to find out more about that event. Get your tickets now. It will be July 1st through 7th. The conference itself starts on July 5th and 6th. But there's so many events. There's tons of things happening. There's a Bitcoin veterans run. They'll be going to a shooting range. They'll be doing some training around that. There's going to be a cruise. There's tons of events. There's a cook-off, a networking event, and just a bunch of different things. Fireworks for July 4th. It's going to be a great time and an amazing experience. And I'm really looking forward to seeing and hearing the conversations that come out of this event, talking to some of Alaska's representatives, talking to some of the legislators there, trying to move Bitcoin mining forward, trying to help Alaskans understand how Bitcoin mining can play a pivotal role in the success of their state. I used to live in Alaska, and I understand some of the issues and some of the drawbacks that many of the people in the communities feel. And I do believe that Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin in general, can help make Alaska great again. So with that, I hope you guys come out. I hope you guys see me at some of these conferences that I'm going to. I do always enjoy having conversations with you guys. I love talking with you and meeting you in person. With that, let's dive right into the podcast with Beau Turner. Today, I'm joined by a true builder in the Bitcoin mining space, someone who's not just running a hosting facility, but is on a mission to educate and elevate his clients. Beau Turner, welcome to the Build a Mind podcast.
Thank you for having me, Trevor. Really excited for this.
I'm excited about it too. We have a close mutual friend, Joe. Joe is he's the first Bitcoiner that I ever met in person. I see him as an uncle, as a friend, as a brother. He's somebody who's mentored me, and when he told, like, I've watched his journey from the very beginning of, like, being fully in the fiat mindset or mining operation, doing robotics, wanting to get out of that and trying to figure out where he's going to fit in. And then I watched that journey, it took him about a year. And, he gets with you and Abundant Minds, and all of a sudden he's breaking ground on a new site. He's got a new wind in his sails. I saw him probably about 2 weeks ago, and he was just really lively. Joe Lively. I love that. He was really lively. He was really excited, and he just looked happy. So, I just want to give my gratitude to you for helping my friend and homie really find a new passion in life and helping him with that outlet.
I would not be where I am without him. His code name in the company is, in fact, Joe Deadly, because he is such a force to be reckoned with.
Love it.
But no, man, what a beautiful soul. I cannot say enough good things about Joe. And honestly, like, there's just times in your life where you get really lucky and the right person comes in your life at the right time. And I'm shocked and awed that we both live in Oregon and can be on this mission together and join forces. There's nobody else in the world that I would rather pick to be doing this right by my side.
And what's great about Joe and, the community that I've found through Joe is that he is a Bitcoiner through and through. Like, he believes in the ethos, the philosophy, the foundational principles. He's not somebody who's out here to make a dollar. He's out here to make a difference. And I really think that that's what sets Abundant Minds apart from other companies trying to do exactly what you're doing in the space. Well, not exactly what you're doing, but, trying to build a hosting facility. Like, you and Joe, you align on your mission and your values. And I think that's something that drew me to him. And I can see why you were drawn to him as well.
The adage in the Bitcoin space is come for the money, stay for the revolution. And that has been true for me, for sure. I definitely was initially exposed to this space with the idea of it being very lucrative. And the more time, the more effort and energy that I spent looking deeper and deeper into it, the more that I realized that this was not just a way to create opportunity for myself, but really to make a huge change in the world that I believe, I'm unabashedly think that we're working on the most important intersection of trends in our world that can have a real positive impact for people that live on planet Earth.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Beau. At the end of the day, like you said, come for the money. We all are looking for a way to safeguard the wealth and the energy that we put into this world. And so it's almost natural when you're seeking out those, safe havens, you kind of land on Bitcoin. And once you start doing the deep dive, you start to figure out all these little pieces and you put them together and you see the big picture. And it's like, oh my gosh, everybody needs to know about this. Like everybody in my circle and outside of my circle needs to know about this. And I think that, like, for me, going back to, like, Joe was the first Bitcoiner that I met. Before I'd ever met any Bitcoiners, like, I was this crazy person in my hometown. My wife would roll her eyes every single time I said the word Bitcoin. And it was very, like, it was daunting. It was very dark for me at that period in my life where it's like, am I truly onto something here, or am I just like screaming into the void and nobody wants to listen? And then I meet Joe and I meet a bunch of other Bitcoiners, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, this is real, this is true, like, I'm onto something here. I mean, I didn't come first, I wasn't the first one here, but at the end of the day, like, I found this and it's aligned with my personal values, like what I want to get out of life. And I found people who also agree with me. And that really raised me up to just like fully dive into this rabbit hole and figure out what my part is in this entire ecosystem of Bitcoin.
In history, there's this trend that really massive changes seem to happen by a small group of really dedicated, very passionate people. Whether you think of like the founding of our country or things like the PayPal mafia, uh, it's these SEAL Team 6 style organizations that are not huge movements to start out with, but just a few really aligned individuals. And, meeting Joe, meeting my local Bitcoin community, connecting with those individuals who are on the same mission as you really is that huge unlock that I think moves things forward in a way that few understand. But really, it's kind of amazing to see. It doesn't take a huge group of people to make massive change. It takes a few very aligned, very high integrity, very capable people who will do the work of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people with their efforts.
Yeah, and something about being aligned and on a truthful path, an authentic path. It's this idea that truth goes farther than lies, and it's just like Bitcoiners. There are toxic Bitcoiners, like 100%, and but I think we need them. I think there's a part of the ecosystem where they fit in. But at the end of the day, being honorable, being authentic, being who you truly are, and then also diving into this space and saying, like, no, like, I am not budging on this is something that matters. And you are either going to, like, learn and do your own research and figure out why this is so important to me, to you, to everyone, or you are going to get left in the dust, and that's on you.
I'm a big meditator, big believer in the process of meditation. And one of my favorites is a guided meditation by Wayne Dyer. And one of the affirmations that he has in it is, I know that I am strengthened as I seek to make truth my personal reality. And that really hits home, especially in the Bitcoin space, because I feel like we're all aligned with something that is very much in accordance with natural law, is very much aligned with the underlying structure of how things work. And so we don't have to necessarily fight the flow. We can really go with the flow and be supported by how information, how intelligence, how nature organizes itself. And you're so much more powerful when you're going in alignment with how things really are than trying to spin an ever more intricate web of lies to push your agenda forward. And any impact that I get to have in my life by working in this space, I'm aware that it really comes from just finding the right thing that's already going to succeed, whether I'm a part of it or not. All I'm doing is hopefully helping accelerate it.
Yeah, I don't meditate as much as I would like to. I to be honest, but I've always, like, tried to sit down and clear my mind. But when I, look into this meditative ecosystem where people are always talking about, clearing your mind, sitting and being still and silent, there's this idea that when you align yourself with who you truly are and you start to manifest the things that you want in life, you start to attract this energy and things become easier. It's like swimming downstream versus swimming upstream. And I think that this kind of like goes to what you're talking about is when you're in the Bitcoin space and you are aligned with who you truly are and you are on your mission, and then you sit and you be silent and you recognize the things that you truly want. I think that, I don't want to say it comes easy, like the things come easy for you, but it's almost like a natural flow and they become fun, they become easily accessible. I mean, nothing in life is quote unquote easy, but at the end of the day, like it's better to do something that you enjoy, that's aligned with you, versus pushing that boulder up a hill because you're not happy in your position, you're not aligned with the end goals, like you're not at a place where you want to be.
I find that that was true for me getting into the mining space because before this, I had an engineering background. I spent some time building a real estate company. Um, these were perfectly adequate vehicles that make plenty of people successful, make plenty of people money. But because it was the right vehicle for the wrong person, I always felt like I was pushing against a wall. That I didn't wake up passionate to go out and do my next real estate deal. Once I started getting deeper into the Bitcoin space and specifically in the mining space, I was just filled with excitement every day to get to work on something that was so poorly understood, so just vehemently opposed by people who didn't understand what they were talking about. At least at the time, we've come a long way since I first started looking at the space. Now it seems like we've got pretty broad-based support and there's a lot less misunderstanding. But at the time, it was just a very natural move into something that ignited my passion every day. And I never thought that I would find that in something that was kind of an engineering adjacent discipline. But now I see the world as a big, beautiful engineering problem that I actually have a chance to solve.
100%. You talk about the passion, you talk about not thinking that you would find that. Something that I think is really interesting about the Bitcoin space is Bitcoin is just not is it's not just a monetary unit, it's not just a new monetary system or an engineering problem or a math solution. It's not just this one thing, technology. It is an ecosystem. And while there's no marketing department for Bitcoin, it seems that like no matter what you do, whether you're a finance guy, a real estate guy, an engineer, a contractor, maybe you're a teacher, doesn't really matter. If you're passionate about Bitcoin, you can find your fit inside of the Bitcoin space. And something about the true alignment of incentives and values and the foundational principles behind Bitcoin propel you to becoming a better person.
Totally agree. We already mentioned it a little bit, but it's as if you made the choice instead of rowing upstream to decide to just go with the flow of the river. And getting on board with the Bitcoin space and getting into mining, for me, felt like aligning with a much more powerful stream than trying to grind and resist and force and try to go from deal to deal in a space that didn't wake me up with passion every day.
Yeah, I can relate to that, like hardcore. I've done many things over the course of my short life, and waking up and feeling like this isn't what I want to do. It is so it drains your soul. It drains the energy out of you. It makes you feel like what's the point to life? And I hate being like down and dark and whatnot. But at the end of the day, like we are humans and we all go through these periods in our life where, we might feel depression, anxiety, sadness, pain. But if you can find an outlet, something that is like driving your passion and that energy and like filling you up, filling your cup versus like draining your cup, it's a much better life to live. And that's what I too have found within Bitcoin. I'm as many of my audience knows, I'm a heat punk. I'm not an industrial miner like you are, but I really love the symbiotic relationship between Bitcoin technology, Bitcoin, the money, and then heat reuse applications. I think it's pretty exciting, and I'd like to get more of your thoughts on that later. So I just wanted to touch on that before, but really, to ask my first question, I guess, is really to get into it. Was there a specific moment in your journey, from finding out like what Bitcoin was, being a real estate investor, and then like deciding you want to build a hosting business that sets that bar higher than it currently is? What was that specific moment that made you go all in?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a long and winding journey. To sum it up relatively quickly, I found Bitcoin pretty early on in 2015. I got some of it. I didn't really pay much attention to it other than seeing the price go up in the 2017-18 bull run, but kind of ignored it after 2017-18. I was also broadly in the crypto space, so I was just kind of experimenting between different coins. I had a lot of ETH at one point. And 2020, 2021 was the period where I really drilled down on Bitcoin specifically, and it came back into my world in a big way. It was a very transitional period. I was very open to exploring a different way to show up in the world, a different way to live. And the world is going through a lot of changes at the moment. So I was really just open to re-examining how I thought about building wealth and building a life. And so after 9 months of reading every book that I could get my hands on, getting just even more deeply dyed in orange, I was really pulled into the mining space. And I had tried mining before in like the 2016 period. It didn't work out well, but I felt like, hey, I've got an engineering development background or an engineering management background, a real estate development background. Like I should be a relatively good fit to get into this space. I know everything that I really feel like I need to know about computers. The economics make a lot of sense to me. Let's get into mining. So I went pretty heavy, pretty fast. I spent about $500,000 on some miners in 2021. This was toward the end of the cycle. So my timing wasn't the greatest, but I was excited. Everybody was excited at that point. And I got these miners and sent them to a host in Georgia. That ended up being one of the worst business experiences of my life. And it took 6 months to get the very first one plugged in. Once they were plugged in, it seemed like about 5 or 10% of them failed every week. So by a couple months in, didn't have a well-running fleet, and $30,000 worth of repair bills that essentially were for a college student to go in and diagnose some basic bugs. So that, on the long course of time, ended up being essentially a total loss. That host went into bankruptcy, huge failure. And I was also just engaged at the time. So I was in the middle of what was the coolest, happiest moment to get engaged to my wife and really be with the woman who I was going to spend the rest of my life with, while our financial future is just imploding. So very much as a man, a crisis of identity. Will I be able to provide? These decisions that I've made clearly are not working out very well. And it came down to just picking the wrong person to work with. And that was such a powerful experience for me that it motivated me. Thankfully, it didn't ruin me. We were able to climb out and are now way better off than we were before. But it really motivated me to solve that itch, solve that problem of really intense pain. And I do some coaching with Dan Martell, and he talks about your purpose lies right next to the worst thing that ever happened to you. And if I could save any young man or investor from not being able to be present with their family or their loved ones because they're worried about a bad investment decision that they made, that's a very powerful mission for me, is to actually get people to be able to enjoy their life and enjoy their time because they're working with the right people. So long story short, after that blow up, started working on finding my own facility, building my own team, control the controllables, put the facility closer to where I live, make sure that the energy contracts are locked in, because that was something else that our host didn't really do very well. And just set it up as the kind of business that I wish that I had when I got into the space. Unfortunately, it is a pretty common experience that people don't have a good time when they first get into hosted mining. And I just felt like that was so wrong. There's no reason why this business shouldn't be hands off, passive, lucrative, and an absolute joy. I mean, we literally plug in computers and make money every day with essentially a hands off experience. And for some reason, operationally and at a company level, that doesn't happen for most people. So solving that, curing that, and building a model that I think suits investors far more, doesn't force people to become subject matter experts and build essentially a second job for themselves and actually get truly a hands-off passive investment. If we do that to any degree, then I consider myself successful. And I think we do a pretty good job of it and are growing really quickly.
Yeah, like you said, this is something that I've heard from tens, if not, over 50 people who have been mining. They talk about this bar for hosting, and it's really low. And unfortunately, while Bitcoin changes some people, come for the number, go up, stay for the revolution kind of thing. There are still people who it's all about the money, it's all about the monetary gain, and they don't necessarily care about the end user, the individual at the end of the day. And I think that's really where the problem lies. I mean, mining is a difficult industry to get into. We all know that. But your integrity as an individual, as a corporation, as a company will show out to the people who use your services. And so when this is the thing that really gets me, is that, some people are sending like all they have to you. Like they send you $100,000 worth of machines and money to get set up in a facility so that you can, manage that for them. And if you're not taking that to heart and saying, look, this might be this person's last amount of money, like that's all they've got, they're trying to figure out how to, set up themselves for retirement. If you're not taking that seriously, like how are you like, I don't understand how you sleep at night if you're not taking that seriously. And not to call anybody out, there are companies out there that are doing really well in the hosting space. You are one of them. And then there are others who just, it's like they just plug these machines in and they don't care what happens to them at the end of the day. They already got their money. Whether the end user gets their Bitcoin or not is not up to them. And that's the thing that I don't like to see, and has really like kept me from diving into like hosting. I can't run miners all day long at my house, and I don't have money to just throw down. Going back to like what you said about how you went through this really turbulent time while you're engaged, set to be married, thinking about, how am I going to provide? How am I going to build this life? Like I resonate with that very much so. I got into Bitcoin through that part of my journey. Getting married in 22, we bought a house in 2020, and after we bought the house, we're engaged, we're set to be married in 22. I've got this life ahead of me, and I'm like, all these great things are happening. But then you look at the financial side of it and you're like, how the hell am I going to make this work?
Mm-hmm.
How do I look forward to a life full of love, compassion, joy, and like all these beautiful things if I can't do the simplest thing that a man is supposed to do? And that is provide shelter, food, an environment where my wife could raise a family for us. Like that for a man, that is a very daunting like thing to face. It's like looking up at Mount Everest, standing at the very bottom and going, how the hell am I going to climb this? And so I can understand the thoughts going through your head at that time. It's very interesting that you were able to experience that at the very beginning, because I think that, like you said, these problems that arise, these really big hurdles, you know, whether it's, you end up with a $30,000, repair bill and a complete loss of all of your funds that you've sent out to somebody who knows who, and you're getting married, at the same time, and trying to like figure out how you're going to do this life. I think that also, it didn't ruin you. Just like I wasn't completely ruined, and we've managed to pull ourselves out of this debt hole that we got into. But it made me a stronger person, and I think that that's what happened for you. And it kind of catapulted you forward to say, okay, I can do this better. And if I can do this better, then why wouldn't I?
There's definitely an aspect to it, and I, thankfully came to this kind of emotional closure a couple of years ago, where I wouldn't have my company without that experience. I wouldn't have been motivated to start what I believe will be my impact vehicle in this lifetime if I didn't have that experience. So in a sense, I owe all of my success and all of my clients' success to this one guy who really did me dirty.
Yeah.
And so on in that sense, I'm very grateful to him. I'm really grateful for that experience. Otherwise, I would be, if I didn't have that, maybe just quietly mining in my own little facility, not taking co-location clients, not looking to help anybody, because I didn't have that experience to really motivate me to solve that problem for someone else.
The cost of
And
tuition.
it's totally a tuition cost in life. And at the core, we're solving emotional problems in general. And my problem during that experience was huge feeling of lack, huge feeling of powerlessness. And if I can instead impart with the people who work with me feeling of abundance and a feeling of empowerment, that's me just going straight into alchemy and transforming that energy into something that can be used for good. So really, I owe that experience every success that I have thereafter.
Yeah. Is that where the name Abundant Minds comes from? You talk about that feeling of abundance. I'm just curious, is that where that comes from?
Yeah, a little bit deeper on that is I really believe that we live in an abundant world,
Mm-hmm.
and that most of the blocks to that abundance are not based in physics, not based in reality, but are based in perception. And so as the company is named Abundant Minds, it starts with an abundant mind, MIND. Could not trademark that one. There's another consulting company that got there first, but the message is the same. You get to determine opportunities come through your life every day, and you may be two doors down from the person who could make you a millionaire. And you just don't know because you're not aware of the opportunity. You don't see the abundance that's right in front of you. So if I can have any impact on people other than helping them make money in Bitcoin mining, it's really to connect to the mindset, the state of being that is abundance, that is having more than enough and being able to share, because that's available to all of us. There's plenty in this world, and our mistake is not seeing it and not allocating it properly.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And again, I'm resonating with the things that you're saying. It's like the abundance versus scarcity mindset is very much like a what is it? It's like limited thinking versus like maximal thinking. And I'm forgetting exactly what the phrase is, but when your thinking mindset is like, well, this is all I can do, so that's all I'm gonna do, versus I don't know I don't know what I can do. Let's see how much I can complete today, and then tomorrow let's see how much more I can do. It's very abundant. And when you show up, this is what I believe. When you show up for yourself with that abundance mindset, saying that, there is enough for me, there is enough for everyone, all of a sudden you look at the world differently. And it goes back to what we were saying at the very beginning, is like how you decide what your values are, what
Mm-hmm.
your beliefs are, what your foundational principles are. Your life becomes very fluid. And when you have an abundant mindset on top of that, it's like you could never be without, because there is always something within. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it totally plays back into mining and even the co-location conversation, because if my host had treated me differently, he would have had a returning client for way more machines coming consistently. But the flow of that continued collaboration stopped as soon as he prioritized short-term gain over someone's experience. And that's what we've seen is as soon as someone sees that it works and that it's working well and that they're taken care of, like they may start with one machine, they may start with 10 machines, and then very quickly go to 10, 20, 100, 300. Like it's the problem of our industry that people are so focused on getting the immediate win and then forgetting about what customer experience does for you, what lowering your churn rate does for you. Like if you treat people right, you don't have to spend very much money on marketing to get new people in the door, because they will refer their friends, they will refer their family, they will want other people to get in on it. If you, on the other hand, treat people very poorly, they don't make a good return, you're just shooting yourself in the foot in terms of being able to grow your business. Because the reality is, the more money that I make you as a co-location client, the more you have available to keep reinvesting and pouring back into growing with me. And to the degree that I make you rich, that I make you feel abundant, that I have an impact on your life, that only comes back to me, even if it's in a very roundabout way.
Yeah, I 100%. To that effect, to that, point, what exactly about Abundant Minds sets you apart from other hosting providers?
There's a lot of things, but one of them you're very familiar with, and that is that we live in one of the best parts in the world to
I
mine.
love the Pacific Northwest, man.
The Pacific Northwest is, I like to say, Eden for Bitcoin miners. It's such a wonderful climate. It's so easy to cut your cooling costs because it's very temperate year round. We've got some of the best energy sources in the world, with one of the largest hydropower networks in the world, really. And to top it off, when people come and visit us, they're not visiting a oil field in the middle of Texas where there's nothing for hundreds of miles. You get to see mountains, you get to see rivers, you get to really enjoy being in the presence of everything that's going on. At the customer level, I mentioned earlier that I kind of got sold a bag of goods when I first got into hosted mining. And then was met with quite a few bills on the back end that I wasn't expecting to get. So our main value proposition is that this is totally hands off for you, and that it's all inclusive pricing. So fan breaks, cable goes bad, you need a repair team to diagnose your rig. We're not charging you for our team to go through and do the proper maintenance on these machines. We're doing regular cleanings, we're doing component swaps, we're doing diagnostics, and you don't get these, $50 to $250 an hour labor bills that totally write off your investment, like you might see with other companies. We've actually, one of our largest clients has several hundred machines with us and also has a few hundred machines with another host. And he mentioned to me one day on a call, I think all these other companies, they just make their money through these fake repairs. And that really stuck with me. And it was part of the reason that I was so frustrated by my experience, was like the repair bill was more than the power bill. It's kind of ridiculous. So being really transparent, being all inclusive is a huge part of the service. The other part is being really transparent about how our operations look. So a lot of companies in the industry, not all, but quite a few, are very reluctant to give you any kind of access to a facility. They may not even share the address of the facility where your machines are with you. And this causes a lot of problems, not just with the feeling of safety, but also you can't really insure any of this stuff if you don't have a facility address where the property is located. And so it creates all this friction. And we're super open about letting people come and see where their miners are hosted, do a site visit. There's also so much learning that goes into being able to come fly out and visit an operating mining site. I like to say that Bitcoin mining was like my second engineering degree, because it totally opened me up to how the world functions. So those are the main things. The climate is not just good for efficiency, but these machines last so much longer if they're in a good environment. And on a computer that you're hoping is going to make multiples on what it initially cost you to purchase, you want that thing to last as long as it can. And so being in Oregon, being in the Pacific Northwest with a really stable climate, with really clean air, that contributes to you just getting a greater return over time.
Yeah, and to your point about, being being in these environments that are, difficult to get to, or you have no idea where the facility is, you're not even allowed on site. I mean, you don't know if your machine getting unplugged, when you look at your dashboard, a machine getting unplugged or a machine failing for some reason looks the same to you. You can't tell the difference. And I'm not here to call anybody out, so I'm not going to name names. But how would you know if that repair that your hosting provider is doing is a viable, like, actual necessary repair, or just something that they're just charging you to get a little extra
Mhm.
money out of you because they lowered their price so much that they're not making any money on the spread of, like, electricity versus your guys' model. I mean, you guys are a premium tier service model. Like, you're probably one of the highest, like, electricity rates that you can get in a hosting service. But at the end of the day, it's completely transparent. You can come to the site, you can see your machine, you can put your hand on it. I mean, shoot, I bet you got cameras in there. I bet you'll show the feed, that matters. Going back to, like, taking care of the assets that people give you to make them money. I think that really matters, and that's a huge difference between you and other hosting providers. Um I mean, I've seen quite a bit. I've never hosted personally, but I've heard a lot of stories, and I have heard nothing but incredible experiences from users of Abundant Minds. And so I think that what you're doing here is not only really important to, like, your perspective on life and, like, how you feel about yourself, but you're, like, going back to that abundance. Like, you are literally providing abundance for people in a world that seeks to steal their wealth from them.
I don't want to get too much on the soapbox, but there's a lot of, especially for people who aren't familiar with their industry, there's a lot of just misunderstanding about where you should be spending money. And to come back to the transparency of the environment, like, if you have no visibility, you really don't know what your host is doing with your equipment.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of times, like, people will have a machine die within 2 or 3 years of getting it. And they're like, what happened? And I can tell you that most cases, especially when we've been shipped machines from other hosts, I can tell you what happened is that they didn't clean your machine from the day that they got it, and it was operating in a really terrible environment.
Mhm.
And that shortened its lifespan by half, probably. And what people don't understand is, like, a premium service often will make you more money even though it's more expensive. It's kind of like, you don't go, if you were going to create an investment portfolio, are you going for all the cheapest stocks that you can find, or are you going for the best stocks that you can find? Just because you've got a portfolio of penny stocks doesn't mean that you've got the most upside and the most margin. It actually means that you've got a far lower likelihood of getting a really good outcome. And so that's how we think of ourselves, is when we provide the service at this high level, and we're doing these regular cleanings and maintaining the environment, and optimizing essentially every aspect of your mining. Even though it's a premium cost, it's a premium outcome as well.
Mhm.
And what people often get into, this is kind of a lack mentality and a scarcity mentality, is going for the lowest cost thing that you can possibly get, and not realizing how much that's going to cost you in terms of time, headache, back end
Stress.
expenses. Like, even just the idea of having to ship these things, like, people don't realize how heavy and expensive it is to ship a miner. If you choose to go with the wrong budget host, and it's a little bit less expensive, you probably lose all of your margin if you end up having to switch just because of the shipping cost. Same goes for energy rates. If you've got a great energy rate, but you're in a horrible climate and environment, and your machine's gunked up with dust and debris, a thing's not going to operate efficiently. So even if you're saving 10 or 15% on your energy costs, if you're using 30% more energy, like, I'm sorry, you made a really bad trade-off.
Mhm.
So it's coming back to this idea of taking the long-term view, that premium objects, premium services really last, really stand the test of time, and ultimately get you better outcomes. I mean, if you've ever bought a luxury good, whether it's a pair of shoes or a watch, uh, the things that you spend money on are really designed to last you for many years or a lifetime. And if you get cheap stuff up front, you should expect to replace it often, because it's not going to last. It's not going to go well. And ultimately, you end up spending less money if you just get something high quality from the outset. But I find with a lot of people, it comes a little bit back to a worthiness issue of not feeling like you're worthy to get the premium thing. Like, I'm splurging on myself. Well, you're reflecting back to your own being that I'm not worth the best that I can get. And I would encourage anybody, whether it's in mining or some other aspect of your life, show yourself that you're worth it, and go for the premium thing that forces you to adopt a mindset of, I'm worth the best that I can get. So sorry for that rant, but
No, it's good. I love it because my grandmother, who was the most influential person in my life, when I look at everywhere I am, who I've become, she was the most influential person in my life. She always told me one thing: you pay for it now or you pay for it later. And if you pay for it later, you're going to pay more. And it goes to exactly what you're speaking about. You can pay for it now and you can buy the premium luxury thing that you want in your life. Or you can cheap out. You can, spend a lot less and buy the cheaper good, but you're going to spend more in the end because you have to buy it twice or you have to buy it a few times. I have a perfect example of this. When we bought our home in 2020, we needed all new floors. And moving into our house, I wanted to get in really fast, really cheap. So I went to Lowe's and I bought the cheapest floor I could get, $2.30 a square foot. I did the entire house. And within 6 months, Beau, the floor is cracking, it's lifting, it's coming up, it's all these things. And I'm just like stressed out. I'm freaking out. And I ended up having to spend significantly more money twice in order to get the floor that I really wanted. If I'd have just bought the $5 a square foot flooring and done the floor the right way the first time, I wouldn't have had to have done it multiple times. And, I spent way more money than I wanted to spend in the end. And that was a valuable lesson for me to learn. And it translates to every industry and every aspect of your life, just like what you said. So I really think that it's important for people to understand that when you're paying for a premium product, you're getting the R&D, you're getting the intentionality, you're getting that abundance mindset, and you're getting a quality product that is going to last the test of time. Whether it's a service, whether it's a handbag, whether it's a car, doesn't matter. So I think that that's important to highlight.
in the mining space, you see people make decisions based on, because most of the times people are quoting in cents per kilowatt hour. People are literally making decisions over pennies, and that was my early experience. Was I found this host. He was about a penny cheaper than someone who probably would have been more reliable, and that would have, if it had gone well, saved me 60 to 70 grand over the course of that first year.
Mhm.
But and so that was hard for me to think about leaving that much money on the table. But for the opportunity to save 60 or 70 grand, I paid $500,000. So when you think about it in context, like, it should have gone for the slightly lower margin but more reliable option that, who knows, might still be mining today with those same units, but
Yeah.
instead I've got a great company.
You stepped over a quarter to pick up a dime.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. But like you said, you learned valuable lessons and it really like catapulted you to where you are today. I'm curious. I know that above the premium services or like, the quality of care that you put into your mining operations to your hosting facilities, what like role does education play in your business model?
Oh man, I love this so much, and we talked about Joe at the beginning of the call. Joe has been educating people with all of his might for, I would guess, his whole life, but at least for 25 years. And that was one of the key reasons that he wanted to be a part of this mission, is that this company to me is not just about getting people a return on Bitcoin mining. It's about teaching investors, teaching people really how the world works and what it's going to look like in the future. Because we sit at this unbelievable time where we're at the intersection of computing and the reinvention of money and the reinvention of our energy systems and all of these foundational layer parts of our economy, parts of how our world operates that go really unstudied by most people. And so there's very little understanding at how the foundational systems of our economy work. And over and above just providing a service that gets people a return, I think that the highest return activity that most people engage in, or that a subset of people, a really smaller set of people engage in, is investing in their own ability to understand the world and make decisions within it. So I talked about mining being my second engineering degree. I mean that so authentically that it's changed my life and the way that I look at the world and the way that I make investment decisions, because I can see the underpinning mechanisms for you change one thing upstream and this changes downstream. There's all of these externalities to making decisions around energy. Energy being one of the most fundamental and most critical things that drives our world that very few people have any grasp of. But if all we did was optimize energy procurement, every aspect of living would be cheaper. I don't think people understand that. I don't think people understand the mechanisms, and I don't think people really feel empowered to make a difference because it's so unapproachable and challenging to learn. And unless you're a miner, you don't really have a lot of incentive to learn. I mean, I didn't have any incentive to learn about energy systems until I was very directly impacted by my ability to get cheap energy.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of like the mining, the investment vehicle of getting into Bitcoin mining is sort of like a Trojan horse to understand the world around you better. And I think that if we did nothing else, our education should be the highest impact thing. And another thing that Dan likes to say, Dan Martell, is if you do your marketing right, you should educate and help more people than ever decide to work with you. And so that's the approach that we take with both free content, educational videos, seminars, whatever it may be. Is we share all the best stuff that we have for free, and hopefully that's enough for people to take action on. And if they never choose to work with us, they should be positively impacted by what we're spreading into the world.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think education is very important and vital to, the Bitcoin space and any other industry or sector or part of your life. You see a lot of people, complaining and crying about this or that or whatever it is, but all they do is read an article headline off of CNN, or some talking head says something, and they don't do the deep dive research to find out, like, is this really true? Is this actually happening? What is this fear, uncertainty, and doubt that I'm seeing, and does it have merit? And because they're not doing that education, they start arguing and having very unproductive conversations that don't lead anywhere, because nobody's basing their argument in fact. It's all fiction. It's all like it's not real. And therefore there's this disconnect, and people aren't able to have constructive conversations that push the world forward. And I think that's something that sets Bitcoiners apart from all other industries, is that we seek truth at all costs. And sometimes, you get the toxic maximalists. Sometimes they are so toxic that they'll tell you the truth, and they do it in a way that like makes you very averse to like wanting to work with them. But at the end of the day, it comes from the truth at all costs. And I don't care if it hurts you, you're going to benefit from it. And I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to go about it, but the underlying message is doing enough research and educating yourself and your community around the things that you're trying to do. For us, it just so happens to be Bitcoin mining. and we want to educate people on how it works, why it's important, how to do it the right way, and how to stay competitive. I think it's very valuable. I'd like to get your opinions, your thoughts on the current state of the Bitcoin mining industry, and then how you see this sector changing over the next 5 to 10 years.
Current state, I feel like the Bitcoin mining industry is on the verge of a wild boom. And we've been resisted by the previous administrations pretty aggressively, and kind of stifled. Thankfully, very resilient group of people, and globally distributed, so there wasn't ever like an existential threat to the network. But I feel like we're entering an environment where our industry is not only allowed but encouraged, and maybe even inhabits a kind of strategic position that is still in the really early stages of getting worked out. So, we've kind of gone from people mining on their laptops throughout the world to a few distributed facilities to gigawatts of power to an energy management resource, and even maybe a strategic resource in terms of defending property rights at a national scale. And I think that's the stage where we're finding ourselves, is just about to enter the kind of national stage. Over the next 5 to 10 years, Bitcoin right now, the network uses something like 0.1 to 0.5% of the world's energy. And I would not be surprised if that swells to like 5 or 10% over the next 10 years. And I think that's a good thing, because this to me is the most poorly understood but most effective and cost effective energy management resource that we have in the world. And it's one of those things that's non-obvious when you haven't studied it, but once you get very deep into how Bitcoin mining interacts with energy systems, you see that it's such a key puzzle piece in reinventing the grid, in monetizing wasted energy, really utilizing the waste that's in our world. And this goes back to the we live in a world in abundance thing, is like there's no shortage of energy. There really isn't. We have more than enough energy in this world, and the problem is how it's put to use. Something like 30% of all the energy generated just gets unused and wasted. California alone curtails more energy than the bottom 30 energy poor countries in the world. So there's this huge opportunity to use more of what we already have, and by doing that, promote a greater degree of efficiency in how the world operates. And people that are still not studied up on the Bitcoin mining industry might take issue with that. It'll take reading a few papers to understand. But the people who are staunch renewables advocates, whether you love them or hate them, like Bitcoin mining is your answer to how this becomes actually viable as an integration to the grid. It's so multifaceted. I think you're also early on the trend of the kind of heat punk movement.
Yeah.
Until there's a piece of silicon heating everybody's house, I think we're in the very early stages of this. The fact that we just run electricity through a wire and use the wasted heat from that to heat our homes with resistive heaters, and it's not doing any computational work on the way, that's a 100% waste. That we're not using that for something else.
I love
So yeah,
that you took it this direction, because this is exactly where I wanted to go with this. So are you familiar with Tyler Stevens' Heat Punk's manifesto?
I am not.
So in his manifesto, he discusses that, like, he starts it off with this idea that there is a direct correlation to the amount of energy consumption that a nation uses and their prosperity, how wealthy that nation is. And you don't get one without the other. You do not get a wealthy nation without high energy usage. But the way that we generate and the way that we utilize that energy matters. Now, going back to another point that you had kind of touched on, the energy uses in the world and how much of it's wasted. Did you know that 50% of the energy used in the world is for heating? Now,
No.
now that's not just comfort heating, that's industrial heating use cases and everything in between. But if let's just say one half of that is comfort heating, which heat punks and the heat reuse space can fill that void entirely. If half of that, so 25% of the world's heating is comfort heating. If just 1% of that 25% was filled with Bitcoin miners with silicon based heating elements that pay you Bitcoin, we would raise the network hash rate by 3 times.
Wow.
That is a incredible statistic, and it goes to this idea of reusing the energy in a much more efficient and much more sustainable way. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I love the heat punk space so much, is because we are looking, not only are we looking at this new technology Bitcoin and saying, oh well, we want to mine Bitcoin, we want to stack sats, like that makes sense, but how can we do something sustainable for ourselves, for our businesses, for our families, for our communities? And it makes sense that Bitcoin and heat reuse kind of just goes hand in hand in saying, hey, we can generate the exact same amount of electricity. We can use it to mine Bitcoin, which, provides you stability. It provides you economic prosperity, but also it provides this much needed use case of giving you heat. I mean, everybody needs heat, whether it's, to warm you up at night, whether it's to wash your clothes and dry, like wash your dishes, or, take showers, or maybe you have a hot tub and you want to enjoy that. Like, you can do all of that through heating with a Bitcoin miner. And then that doesn't even talk about like the business use cases of Bitcoin mining. I know several people, ranchers, farmers, agricultural providers who are using Bitcoin miners instead of other electrical resistive heating elements. And it's really interesting and intriguing to me to think about where Bitcoin mining is headed when you throw that into the mix.
You're hitting on why this is the most interesting engineering problem in the world to me. Is if all we did was put our resources toward addressing this, toward the heat problem, we would be solving such a huge degree of waste in the system that runs the world. And that brings prosperity to everybody if you find a way to monetize a waste product. Even closer to home, you mentioned agricultural uses, like our Eugene site that I think you got a chance to visit.
Yes, I did.
We're lining that up to actually reuse the heat to power a greenhouse, or to heat a greenhouse through the winter. And if you've ever tried to grow fresh fruit and vegetables in the winter in Oregon, it's not an easy task. You need some heat and some help. So that'll be a heat reuse case for us, where we're growing food that'll be fresh and local for the community to be able to donate to food banks in the middle of winter.
And again, providing a use case that circles back to generosity and abundance for the community. I mean, it's incredible. And if you could do this, 100,000 different times all over North America and the rest of the world, imagine the world that we could live in. I mean, there are so many things. This is what I love about Bitcoin mining. There are so many things where Bitcoin mining is playing a pivotal role in changing the way our world looks at energy, looks at waste management, looks at, population density and energy disbursement. It's insane to me. And we are so early that people still don't think that Bitcoin is what we're saying it is. You know what I mean? Like, there's still people out there that saying that Bitcoin is boiling the oceans, that Bitcoin is using up all of our world's energy. And we're literally the exact opposite. And I think that that is absolutely wild.
We as educators have no lack of work to do. So if you're ever worried about AI taking your job, if you're an educator in the Bitcoin space, I feel like you got a job for a little while, because there's a lot of misunderstanding to clear.
For sure. I wanna end, we're getting to the top of the hour here. I want to end this off by doing something a little bit selfish. Um, you are a podcaster as well. You've started a podcast, Abundant Minds, and you've had some really influential guests on your podcast. You know, Preston Pish, you've had Natalie Brunell, you had Jack Dorsey on the podcast. Um, I'm I'm really curious to just kind of hear about how you stay authentic to you and your podcast while also having fun with your interviews.
The main thing is, one, you have to be authentically curious. So anytime that I've got a list of questions that I don't actually have any interest in knowing the answer to, it's going to fall flat. It's not going to be an interesting interview. The energy's not going to be there. So being sure to not just think about what the audience wants to hear, but really what I want to know about. I got to assume that the people listening are listening because they might be a little bit like me. And so if I'm not pursuing what I'm genuinely curious about on every interview, then I'm doing a disservice to the people who are looking for me to ask the questions that they're hoping to get an answer to. Um, the other side of it is just making sure that I do a little bit of research on everybody. If you've listened to a lot of people's podcasts, they end up if it's an hour long podcast, they usually spend half an hour, 45 minutes covering the same shit every single time. And so if you can do a little bit of research on people and see how they've already answered things that you're asking them, it definitely helps and allows you to go much further in the interview, and is a very refreshing experience for them as well, because they've been asked the same thing 15 different times if they're doing the podcast circuit. If you can ask it in a different way, if you can uncover a different side to them, if you can get them to share something that maybe they wouldn't have shared had you not asked a slightly more nuanced question, I always find that leads to the most interesting answers as well as the most satisfied guests. I'm happy to say that we do often get the comment of, "Wow, you really did your research. Like, those were amazing questions." And I mean, hopefully they're not just being nice and telling me that because it's what I want to hear, but it's really, it takes some effort, and I find that the effort is totally worth it rather than just going in cold with somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's valuable to me and to what I'm doing. I'm curious, what does work life balance look for you? I mean, you're a podcaster, you're a Bitcoin miner. I'm sure you have other things as well. You've got a life and a wife, and probably trying to build a family. So how does that play into an industry that absolutely never sleeps? I mean, Bitcoin doesn't stop, Bitcoin mining doesn't stop, and so what is that like for you?
I've got definitely an obsessive personality, so I go very deep and very hard into things. I guess the real answer to this is that I don't think about work-life balance, and I'm stealing this from, I think, Jeff Bezos, but I really look at it more like work-life integration. So I'm looking at how I can have fun in what I do every day and wake up excited to do Bitcoin mining every day, whether it's the podcast, whether it's doing site visits or doing media tours or going to conferences. Like, I'm trying to make my work as fun as it can be. I also love having my wife involved in working with me. So she does quite a bit behind the scenes with me in terms of both getting podcast guests and going to conferences with me. I really consider her a partner, not just in life, but also in building something meaningful and impactful in business. Um, so yeah, I'm always really thinking, how can I align both my personal joys and my professional pursuits in a way that it's just fun all the way through. Like, as soon as this starts feeling like work, I got to reevaluate. I got to look at my calendar. I got to do an audit of what's giving me energy, what's taking energy. And, full transparency, if the podcast ever feels like a bore or it's something that's forced, we'll just stop doing it, or we'll do it less frequently, or I'll only get people who I really want to talk to. As soon as you start holding yourself to rules that don't give you a lot of energy and kind of light you up with zest for life, you start to underperform and the quality suffers. And so I would much rather do uh, only the things that I'm going to do well and really enjoy doing, and do those to the highest level, rather than just keep stacking things on my plate because some version of me decided that I had to adhere to a rule set that I arbitrarily decided on.
Wow, that's those are words to live by, man. Like I got to be honest, I think that I fall into the latter camp of putting things on my plate because it's like, oh, I feel like I need to do this or I have to do this or, like it's the only way through. And I do think that the quality suffers a little bit. And I always I don't know if I'm stressing about it or if I'm just constantly thinking about it. I think that's kind of stress, but I'm always like, am I doing what I'm truly supposed to be doing? Am I, providing the best content that I can provide to my community, to the people who watch me and follow me for, some reason. I don't know why, but I think that I might have just gained some very important wisdom from you, Beau, and I appreciate that. This whole podcast has been a lot of fun. It's been great talking with you, and I think I really align with who you are and the energy that you're putting off. I think I need to get into meditation a little bit deeply. It's something that I've been thinking about for a while, but I just started getting back into the gym. So I'm working on my health regimen and just trying to like take more time for me and also be more present in my home life because I do have a new baby and, I want him to grow up knowing that, hey, dad's around and dad's always here. But finding a way to balance what I want to give to my family and who I want to be when I show up at work is something that I'm struggling with right now.
Think always selfishly about giving everything that you can to yourself, because if you don't put yourself first, you've got nothing left to give people at the end of the day, whether it's your colleagues, your family, your child. There's a degree of selfishness that we have to have so that we can show up in the way that we want to. Because even if you're there and you're stressed out, or you're there and you don't feel your best, you're delivering a lower quality version of yourself to the people who really love you and really want you there. And so I would say being selfish is totally okay, especially if it's selfishness in service of what you know to be long term good for the people around you. It's almost like selfless selfishness. Um, and we all have an internal guidance system that many of us hear and choose not to listen to. And I've done this plenty of times in my life. I'm no like sage or perfect at doing it, but I can recognize that it's something that a lot of us have to work on. Is there's many times in life where we know the answer, we know the right thing, we know the right path for us, and for some reason we don't listen to it. Whether it's because we feel like we've got to uphold a standard that we shared with somebody else, um, or just are scared to take the leap and do what we know is right for us. I really think that the closer that you can get to taking action on that still quiet voice that is giving you the right answer, the right way to move forward, the easier and more prosperous your life will unfold, even if it's non-obvious why you're being directed and guided to take that path. So, um, you know, follow your heart, I guess, would be the summation of that.
Damn, that's beautiful, Beau. And I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me. I know that you're a very busy man and you have a lot of things going on, and this was very valuable to me. I hope that the audience can find value from it as well. But for this I'm gonna be a little selfish. I'm gonna say that at this point, I think that this podcast was more for me than it was for anyone else. And I definitely am walking away from this conversation with a different outlook and how I show up and perceive myself and my values. And maybe the podcast changes a little bit from here. Maybe we switch it up a little bit. We do something different. But I'm hoping that that's the right path. So I just want to say thank you.
Of course. And thank you for having me on, Trevor.
Yeah, real quick before I let you go, man, I got something that I do with every guest. I want to know what What does Bitcoin mean to you?
You can edit out the silence if you need to.
I love that you're taking the time to think about this.
Honestly, Bitcoin to me is the impact that I always hoped that I could have personally on people's lives in a vehicle that doesn't depend on me.
Damn. That I get a lot of answers, Beau. I get a lot of answers to this question. Most of the time, people just right off the cuff, they say Bitcoin is hope. Bitcoin is freedom. I have not gotten that answer. And maybe it's because you took the time to think about it. I don't know if that just comes down to your personality. Maybe it's the meditation and taking a step back and breathing before you respond. But oh man, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Trevor. Thanks for anybody that didn't skip that because they were worried that the podcast ended or the playback paused.
Tell the audience where they can get a hold of you. How can they get in touch with Abundant Minds if they want to find a premium hosting provider?
For sure. You can find us at our website, abundantminds.com. On all socials, our handle is at Abundant Minds. So Instagram, X, TikTok, even LinkedIn, YouTube. You can find us pretty much everywhere at Abundant Minds. For me personally, I do have a Twitter. It is Beau_Turner21. And look forward to being able to help anybody in your audience, and whether they work with us or they just follow along for the education, hope we impart some value on your life.
Well, you've definitely imparted some value on my life today, Beau. So I look forward to seeing what Abundant Minds does. And I'm telling the truth here when I'm thinking about this. I'm highly thinking about sending some machines to you or purchasing some machines through you guys and having you host them for me because I can't do it at my house. So I need someone to do it. And it'd be much better to have somebody in my own backyard to do it for me, especially a premium service like Abundant Minds.
Love it. Would love to have you.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. This has been the Build a Mind podcast. We will see you next time. All right. What did you guys think of that? That was a very insightful episode for me. I learned a lot about how to show up in the world based on Beau's experiences, building a business, being screwed out of, $500,000 worth of assets and not knowing where to go. And then him deciding, hey, I can do it better. I think that really shows itself and lends itself to building a much better business. And that's what Abundant Minds is doing. That's what Beau is doing. I want to send a personal shout out to Joe Lively. Joe Lively is my friend, mentor, and somebody I deeply look up to. And he's the one that got me in contact with Beau. And this episode was so insightful to me that I think I'm going to change up the way that we're doing the podcast. I want to show up in the most authentic way, and I want to provide content to you guys that not only are you learning stuff, are you enjoying, but you're also drawn to. And I don't know if that's happening right now. I don't know if people are watching. I mean, based on the view count, and I really don't think that matters so much, but based on the view count, it's not getting the engagement that I would hope that it would get. And so obviously it's not anything that you guys are doing wrong. It's something that I'm doing wrong. And I got to figure out what that is. And maybe it's because I'm pushing too hard at just getting podcasts out and not thinking about and cultivating a deeper connection with my guest. So I want to focus on that more. I want to provide deeper and more meaningful content to you guys, something that matters more to me. So while it's still Build a Mine, we still talk about Bitcoin mining, we still talk about Bitcoin. I think I want to branch out a little bit more and talk about life and talk about philosophy and talk about, how Bitcoin plays into this and how mining and heat reuse can play into it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. If you don't, let me know. Just, put it in the comment section or whatnot. But with that, guys, this has been Build a Mind podcast. It was a great conversation with Beau. Beau, I really appreciate you. I'll make sure that we link all of your information in the show notes so people can get a hold of you if they want to, just talk to you about Bitcoin mining, life. Maybe they want to host with you. I do recommend it. If you want to get some hosting, go with Abundant Minds. I've seen their sites. Their sites are phenomenal. So with that, guys, we will see you next time on the Build a Mind podcast. I appreciate your time and your energy, and I hope that you enjoy what we're doing here in the future. Take care.